All right, welcome back to Always Adaptive. I'm your host, Randall James, and today's topic is about cardio versus resistance training when it comes to fat loss. You've been told that cardio is king for fat loss, but is it really? I wanted to make this video because just far too often I see videos or comments on various social media posts literally telling people not to do cardio, saying that all you need to do is resistance training. And then on the other side of the coin, we have people that only do cardio. Cardio bunnies is what we call them. Neither is correct, and just like with all things, the answer is nuanced and somewhere in the middle. So I figured let's dive deep into the topic and help you, the viewer or the listener, decide how they should approach the topic. You've likely heard that in order to burn fat, you need to be in a caloric deficit. So what is a caloric deficit? I'm not going to rehash what a calorie is. That would take up too much time. And I did make a video all about calories. You can watch it here, and in it, I break down exactly what a calorie is in great detail, as well as debunk another podcast host that tries to debunk the calories in versus calories out model of weight loss. For the purposes of this video, though, I want you to envision calories as a measurement of the energy in food, just like miles are a measurement of the distance of road, and ounces are a measurement of water. It's just amounts, okay? We're not going to overcomplicate this. A calorie deficit means you have taken in less calories than you have burned, and a surplus means you have taken in more calories than you have burned. Usually, in order to lose fat, you do need to be in a caloric deficit. This doesn't always need to be true, however. There are times when people can burn fat and build muscle at the same time, meaning the scale might not move or could even go up. This happens during recomposition phases, especially in beginners and those returning after a layoff. These individuals experience rapid adaptations, meaning better insulin sensitivity, faster muscle protein synthesis, and more efficient nutrient partitioning. In simple terms, the calories you eat are more likely to be used for rebuilding muscle, while stored fat gets tapped into to cover the extra energy cost of those gains. That's why even without a large calorie deficit, or at maintenance even, the body can still burn fat, because it's prioritizing recovery and growth and pulling energy from fat stores to get it done. That's where energy exchange comes into play. And as far as I know, I'm the first to frame it this way. So take note, you heard it here first. If someone needs to build muscle, that is an energy intensive process. Well, if someone doesn't eat at a surplus, that energy would need to come from somewhere. Sometimes it can come from stored fat on the body being broken down and used for ATP to help out. This is where energy exchange comes into play, and this is one way that people, specifically newer lifters, can lose fat while not in a deficit. I just want to be clear, though, examples like this are fringe, and for the most part, you do have to be in a caloric deficit. Another group of people that can experience building muscle and losing fat in a deficit or at maintenance are detrained lifters. This is because of muscle memory. Myonuclei remain from previous training, speeding up regrowth. What do I mean by myonuclei? So essentially, when you build muscle, there are nuclei that are built. Once those are there, even if you were to lose your muscle, let's say you take a year off, those nuclei are still there. And so it'll be so much faster for you to rebuild muscle after taking that year off than it would have to even build the nuclei in the first place. They also experience faster results because of a resensitization to the training. After time off, the muscles and the nervous system respond like it's new again. And there's also the fact that neural pathways already exist. Coordination and strength come back very quickly. So yes, it is possible, but once you get to a certain point, it is highly improbable as the energy and time required to build the muscle becomes greater. So what influences your calories? There are several moving parts that influence how many calories your body burns each day. Together, they form what is called your total daily energy expenditure, or TDEE. Here's a quick breakdown of TDEE. Think of it like a pie chart. BMR, which is your basal metabolic rate, accounts for about 60 to 70% of your calories. This is your baseline metabolism, and this is calories burned just to stay alive. Then we have NEAT, which is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. If you've been watching me for a while, you've heard me mention this a few times. This accounts for 10 to 20% of all of your calories, and it accounts for your spontaneous movement throughout the day, walking, fidgeting, chores, pacing while on the phone, etc. There are data out there suggesting that NEAT can vary by as much as 2,000 calories between individuals. This is huge, and you can see the difference in this image taken from the paper Non-Exercise Activity Thermogenesis in Human Energy Homeostasis. People that do strenuous work burn 5 times as many calories due to NEAT than someone that is chair-bound for their whole day. Next up, we have EAT, which is exercise activity thermogenesis. This accounts for about 5 to 15% of your calories, and it's structured exercise like lifting weights, running, cycling. All of this burns calories, but not as much as people think. And then lastly, we have the thermic effect of food, which is about 10% of your calories. This is accounting for the amount of calories that are burned just to digest and absorb and process the food that you're eating. This is higher for protein than it is for carbs or fat. Each of these is influenced differently depending on how you train, eat, and recover. So now that we've got the framework in place, let's break down how cardio and resistance training impact these systems and how they stack up across 5 essential categories. Those are muscle preservation and physique change, calorie burn amount and type, mental health and mood support, time efficiency, safety, and accessibility, and then lastly, overall health impact. I'm going to go one by one, break down the pros and cons of each, and tally the score at the end. So let's get into it. Starting off with muscle preservation and a calorie deficit. For resistance training, lifting delivers mechanical tension, which tells your body this tissue is still needed. Without that stimulus, especially in a caloric deficit, your body will break down both fat and muscle for fuel. Combine this with sufficient protein intake, which also has the highest thermic effect of food, by the way, and your body prioritizes muscle preservation while burning fat because it needs energy to even process said food. From a TDEE perspective, this protects your basal metabolic rate. That's the 60 to 70% of the calories you burn just staying alive. Muscle is metabolically active tissue. Lose it and your BMR drops. Keep it and you maintain a higher energy output even at rest. Now for cardio. Cardio helps you burn calories, but it doesn't provide the same muscle preserving signal. In a deficit without lifting, especially with excessive cardio, your body may pull from lean tissue as well as fat for fuel, especially if protein intake is low. Just to back that point up, I want to present to you this study entitled Effects of Resistance versus Aerobic Training combined with an 800 calorie liquid diet on lean body mass and resting metabolic rate. The researchers wanted to test whether high volume resistance training could preserve lean body weight and prevent metabolic slowdown during a 12-week, very low-calorie diet when compared to the same low-calorie diet and endurance exercise. There were 20 adults, 17 women, and 3 men with an average age of 38. The diet, as I said, was an 800-calorie-a-day liquid formula for 12 weeks. This is extremely aggressive. The groups were the control plus diet, 1 hour of aerobic exercise. This could be walking, bike, stair climb, whatever, 4 times a week. And then the resistance training plus the diet. They were resistance training 3 times a week at 10 stations, increasing to 4 sets of 8 to 15 reps eventually. The results of the study were that both groups lost weight as expected on an 800 calorie a day diet. The cardio group lost significantly more total body weight than the resistance training group did though. However, this was only scale body weight. Here's where things get really interesting. We're going to talk about lean body weight. The cardio group lost significant lean body weight, whereas the resistance training group preserved all lean mass. No loss detected. You heard that correct. All lean mass. This is a huge win for resistance training. Even under extreme calorie restriction, it preserved muscle mass. The cardio group also saw a drop in 24-hour resting metabolic rate, while the resistance training group experienced an increase in resting metabolic rate. This is truly remarkable given the extreme calorie deficit, 800 calories a day. That is crazy. Resistance training not only protected metabolism, but it improved metabolic efficiency per kilogram of body mass. It also speaks to how aggressive weight cuts for short periods of time can be a useful strategy for cutting fat off the body while preserving lean mass. This is an idea that previously was thought of as largely impossible. And I'm guilty of saying that myself. If you could speak to some of my clients, they would likely tell you how particular I am about them losing weight slowly, because I've always valued the muscle, the work that they're putting in during their training. That's hard-fought muscle that they're building. And so I've always been weary of them losing weight too quickly. But to be honest with you, these data do sort of shift my opinion a little bit. And in fact, I have discussed with one of my most recent clients that I had a session with about potentially shifting to an extreme calorie deficit just to experiment for a short period of time, say 4 weeks or something, just to see what happens. So the winner of this category is resistance training. Weight training preserves muscle, protects metabolism, and maintains the structure of your physique, not just the number on the scale, meaning you actually need to lose less fat to see your results to begin with. Cardio does not get this benefit. And in fact, if just doing cardio in a calorie deficit, you run the risk of losing muscle, as that study showed. The next category we have is calorie burn amount and type. We're going to start off with resistance training again. Lifting burns fewer calories during the session than cardio, but it comes with a modest afterburn effect known as EPOC. Excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. After training, your body consumes oxygen to return to baseline, which increases post-workout energy expenditure by about 6 to 15%, depending on intensity and volume, of course. Over time, resistance training increases lean mass, which slightly raises your BMR, supporting a higher calorie burn even at rest. Cardio also has this effect, but it doesn't seem to be as pronounced. Also, from a fuel usage perspective, RER, or respiratory exchange ratio, during resistance training typically lands around 0.85 0.5 to zero point 0.9, meaning your body is burning a mix of fat and carbs, usually carbs during high intensity lifts and fat while you're resting and letting your heart rate come back down. Cardio, especially steady state or high intensity interval training, burns more calories during the session itself, making it an efficient way to create a short-term calorie deficit. Depending on your intensity, your RER shifts. So 0.7 would be the ratio changes to mostly fat and less carbs. This would be your low intensity zone 2, whereas 1.0 would be mostly carbs. They would shift. And then over 1 would be like an anaerobic effort or sprint effort. Just think of it like jet fuel mode. This is essentially all carbohydrates, very little fat. So cardio sort of allows you to pick and choose what ratio of fat to carbohydrates you want to use during the activity. Resistance training, that's a bit harder to customize, so to speak. If I want to go do a really long cardio session, let's say zone 2, if I want to go out and do a 90-minute run, it's pretty easy for me to keep my heart rate down and make sure that I'm burning mostly fat during that run. Of course, carbs will get used, but I'm still using mostly fat. That's what the ratio would be. But one of the bonuses to cardio is that the extra calorie burn gives you a little bit more room in your diet, whether that's for a bit of food volume flexibility or keeping your sanity when eating out. It's not a license to binge, but for many, it's a buffer that keeps the plan sustainable. And this is the case for me. So the winner for this category is cardio, in the short term at least. Cardio does have a higher real-time calorie burn, and it makes for a great short-term fat loss tool and a useful way to enjoy life without micromanaging every bite. I'm able to enjoy some of the foods that I like to enjoy more readily and not have to eat like a literal robot because I run alongside my lifting. Also, cardio better allows for controlling heart rate zones to ensure that the extra calorie burn is coming more from fat as measured by respiratory exchange rate. Our next category is mental health and mood support. We're starting off with resistance training again. One of the really cool things about resistance training is that it does build confidence from an improved physique and increased strength. It also reduces anxiety and improves long-term brain health. Also helps with self-esteem and resilience over time, even if the post-lift high isn't as intense as it is with cardio. It can even help with depression, as evidenced by this study entitled Association of Efficacy of Resistance Exercise Training with Depressive Symptoms. This was a meta-analysis of 33 randomized controlled trials with a total of 1,800 participants. They split everyone up into a resistance training group of 947 individuals and then a control group of 930 individuals. Depression scores were then measured pre and post-intervention. The key finding of the study was that there was a Hedges D score of 0.66, which means a moderate reduction in depressive symptoms. You don't need to know what a Hedges D score is. It's essentially their way of pulling the results across all the studies to determine whether it was good or bad. But in a nutshell, what it means for the results is that for every 4 people who do resistance training, 1 sees a clinical improvement in depression. This is a NNT score of 4, or a number needed to treat score. That's pretty good. So every 4 people that resistance training, 1 of them experiences depression benefits. Now, how does cardio stack up against that? Cardiovascular exercise does elevate serotonin, endorphins, and other feel-good brain chemicals more rapidly, often creating a runner's high. It's also strongly associated with lower stress and improved sleep. It can also have amazing effects on depression, just like lifting can. Let's look at another study showing such. This study, it's entitled Exercise and Pharmacotherapy in the Treatment of Major Depressive Disorder, or the SMILE trial. I've talked about this study in other videos on mental health and exercise. The participants were all adults with major depressive disorder, and the intervention compared aerobic exercise and antidepressants, specifically sertraline, and a combination of both over 16 weeks. The results were that exercise was as effective as sertraline in reducing depressive symptoms. Combination therapy offered no additional benefit compared to either intervention alone. So in short, exercise alone matched the efficacy of antidepressants for mild to moderate MDD. So who's the winner of this category? Well, for me, it's a tie. Cardio delivers faster mood boosts, but lifting supports deeper, long-term mental resilience. Both also have clear mental health benefits and improved confidence. Okay, so we got 2 more categories. The next one is time efficiency, safety, and accessibility. Starting off with resistance training. Lifting offers a decently high return on time, especially with compound movements, but has a steeper learning curve. Technique matters, and poor form under load increases injury risk. That said, it's highly adaptable with proper programming. Resistance training can be scaled for beginners, seniors, and those recovering from injury. It also requires some equipment, space, and a little bit of basic instruction to get started safely. Unless you're doing calisthenics, but then the skill ceiling gets even higher. Calisthenics are often much harder than the traditional exercises one would do in a gym. Now for cardio. I would say cardio is more intuitive and accessible. You can walk out your door and do it. Little to no equipment is needed for most types, and many forms like walking or cycling carry minimal injury risk. However, high impact or high volume cardio like distance running or plyometrics can stress the joints and soft tissues if overdone or poorly progressed. But once again, cardio burns more calories per unit time. So my winner for this category it's a tie. Cardio is more accessible and easier to start, and resistance training takes more setup, but resistance training offers massive long-term payoffs, if done correctly, that is. They both have their wins and their trade-offs in that department. So now we're moving on to the last category, overall health impact. For resistance training, lifting isn't just for aesthetics. It has a powerful ripple effect across multiple health systems. It improves insulin sensitivity, helping regulate blood sugar and reduce risk for metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. It enhances bone density, which is crucial for long-term joint health, posture, and injury prevention, especially with aging females. It supports hormonal balance, testosterone, growth hormone, estrogen, and improves functional capacity, your balance, your mobility, and your strength in your daily life. Over time, it can indirectly boost NEAT by making you stronger and more mobile and more confident in your movement, by the way. That's pretty important. However, cardiovascular training shines when it comes to heart and lung health. This is the point that I've been wanting to cover. And of course, I saved it for the end when most people have already clicked off the video. But if you're still here, this is really important, and I need you to hear me on this. VO2 max is strongly correlated with mortality, meaning the lower your VO2 max, the shorter your life is. If you hear people talking about how cardio is worthless, just know that it is extremely difficult to increase your VO2 max into the top 10% range of people without doing some form of cardio, and even then, there need to be specific modalities used. To drive that home, I want to talk about this study entitled Long-Term Change in Cardiorespiratory Fitness and All-Cause Mortality. This was in a population of 579 men aged 42 to 60. So basically, they looked at their VO2 max at baseline and then did a re-examination 11 years later. There was also then a follow-up for mortality over 15 years after that second measurement. Of course, for their cardiorespiratory fitness measurement, they used the gold standard of a VO2 max measured via respiratory gas exchange during maximal exercise testing. On average, VO2 max declined by 5.2 points over 11 years. 123 out of 579 of participants died during the follow-up. The major finding was that for every 1 milliliter per kilogram per minute increase in VO2 max over time, there was a 9% reduction in all-cause mortality risk. To put that into perspective, it's very common for someone going through a single running program, training for a race or something, to add 10 points to their VO2 max in like a 12 or 16-week period. Based on this study, that could correlate to a roughly 60% lower risk of all-cause mortality. This is a powerful argument for keeping cardio in your training rotation. Cardio also lowers your resting heart rate, and it reduces blood pressure, leading to a major drop in cardiovascular disease risk. It also supports mental health, which we already went over, enhances immune function, and it improves mitochondrial density, which boosts how much cellular energy you have access to in the first place. Regular cardio can reduce inflammatory markers and improve circulatory efficiency, making essential for heart, brain, and metabolic health. Lifting also has some of these effects as well, especially the blood pressure lowering effects. So the winner here is a tie. Both forms are essential. Cardio protects your heart and lungs, while resistance training protects your bones, metabolism, and of course your muscles. The most resilient bodies are built with both. So for the category wins, we have for muscle preservation, resistance training wins. For calorie burn, cardio wins. For mental health, tie. Time efficiency and accessibility, tie, and overall health impact was a tie, with the final tally being resistance training gets 1 win, cardio training gets 1 win, and there is a tie across 3 categories. So it's a tie all around. This isn't a fight, it's a framework. Remember that. Cardio and resistance training each bring unique strengths to the table. Resistance training protects your muscles, elevates your metabolism, and shapes the body you're trying to reveal, not just shrink it. Balance wins. Use both. Don't just burn calories. Build a body that burns more by default. If you're interested in a free evidence-based hybrid program that combines both resistance training and cardio and some of the research that I've compiled this year, head to the description of this video. I'll have a link down there, and all I need from you is your email address. It's broken down for runners, but you can replace the running portion with just about any other cardio tool. But that's it for me, everyone. I appreciate you sticking around. If you're still here, I love cardio and I love lifting, and I think getting more people to do both is a beautiful world that I'd like to live in. But my name is Randall. I'm a strength and a running coach, and this is Always Adaptive, a business born from the idea that we are always adapting. Literally, right this moment, whether you're sitting or standing, that is an input into your nervous system. You're adapting to that. Every time you eat certain foods or partake in certain activities, you're adapting to that. So control your inputs and you can control your life. I will see you at the next one. Stay adaptive.